Hello, everybody. Welcome back to World History. Today we're going to be talking about Christianity, and this is Chapter 6, Section 3, if my memory proves correct. So, Chapter 6, Section 3. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is tell you about the life of Jesus more than what the textbook does. Now, basically, my philosophy here, and I think the philosophy of the school and of public education in America, is that you don't need any kind of public figures to tell you what religion you should be. You can be Christian if you like, you can be Muslim if you like, you can be Jewish, you can be Baha'i, you can be Buddhist, Hindu, any kind of religion or spiritual teaching that you want to be. That's part of American freedom. However, so much of American culture and Western European culture is rooted in Jewish and Christian faith and symbolism that it really helps to understand a bit more about Christianity and the life of Jesus if you want to understand more about our civilization. And I found that to be true. I wasn't raised particularly one way or the other. I was pretty relaxed in terms of religion. And the more I wanted to study art, and great art of the Italian Renaissance and the medieval period, and even through the 1600s and the 1700s, the more I discovered I needed to know about Christianity. So I ended up reading the New Testament and learning a whole bunch of stuff from it. So whether or not you're religious, whether or not you're Christian in today's America, it really does help to at least understand more about Christianity. Again, I am not trying to convert you one way or the other. I have no investment in trying to get you to be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or anything. But I'm just going to try to give you the best education I can. And part of that is understanding Christianity and the life of Jesus. So basically, to understand the life of Jesus, we have to take a look at his life story, which is told to us in the New Testament mostly through four evangelists, four of his disciples and followers who wrote his story down. There's John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And each one of the four versions of the life of Jesus specializes in something a little bit different. One of the four primarily is trying to tell you the life of Jesus from a Jewish perspective, so that if you're Jewish, you might convert. Another one is trying to tell you the perspective of Jesus' birth, especially. One of them is trying to tell you the story supposedly straight from God, that Matthew, I think it is, received the story directly from an angel who was dictating to him straight from God through the angel to Matthew. So absolutely nothing in that story can be wrong, right? So anyway, what we know about the life of Jesus comes from those four: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, the life of Jesus, actually, you have to start by going back to Jesus' grandparents, Joachim and Anne. They were old, and they hadn't had kids yet. And in the Jewish faith, having kids is kind of generally regarded as a sign that God loves you and God is rewarding you for your loyalty and your good behavior. And so Joachim and Anne were in their 60s or their 70s, and they'd never had any kids, and they felt punished by God. So they prayed to God and said, please, can't you give us a kid to prove that you love us? And God answered and said, okay, I'm going to give you a really special treasure. Because you've been so good and so loyal for all these years, you've accepted any punishment that I've given you, you're going to have my most precious girl. So what you need to do in order to get pregnant is Joachim needs to go off in the desert for like 30 days or 40 days, and he needs to wander around for a while. And then Anne, on the 40th day, you need to be waiting for him at the gate of the city, the golden gate of the city. And when Joachim comes back, you need to kiss him in the gateway. And if you kiss him in the gateway, I'll give you the child that you've always wanted, and it will be the mother of my son. So Joachim goes off and wanders in the desert, kisses Anne in the gateway, the Golden Gateway, when he comes back to the city, and Anne gives birth to the Virgin Mary. Now, the Jewish leaders knew that the Virgin Mary was super special. Right at the very beginning, they knew that she was going to be a real gift to humanity, according to the Bible. And she started actually teaching the rabbis of the Jewish faith stuff about her own dad, God, from like the age of 4. She supposedly was super holy and special even as a toddler. So when she turned like 14 or 15, the rabbis knew that she was going to have to go to a very, very special guy. And there were seven. There were 7 different groups of Hebrews, 7 different groups of Jewish people, 7 tribes. And each one of them was told, I want you to send your very best. Give me a man who is your very best. Send him to the synagogue here in Jerusalem. I think it was Jerusalem. And we will make sure that one of them is the husband of this amazing young girl. So each one of the 7 tribes picked their best candidate. One of the tribes was kind of sad and lonely and tired and was running down on who to pick. And they had this older guy who was a carpenter named Joseph. And he was kind of not a young, handsome, athletic quarterback. He was already in his 30s, I think, maybe even 40. He was sad and lonely, but he was a really, really good Jewish person in their tribe. And so they decided to send him instead of a strong, young, healthy man. Now, the thing that they were supposed to bring with them, they weren't told that it was going to help decide who would get to be the Virgin Mary's husband. But the thing that they were supposed to bring with them was a twig from a tree, a tiny branch of a tree. And now, obviously, that's going to be dead. A twig is dead once it's broken off the tree. All of the 7 men arrive, and all of the handsome young men who are like the quarterbacks and the jocks and the awesome, super awesome guys walk up to the Virgin Mary, and they're told to hold their twig out. And nothing happens. Nothing special happens when any of them walk out. Except Joseph, the older, sad, lonely guy. Joseph walks up to the Virgin Mary with his twig out, and the twig starts blossoming. The leaves and the flowers start just popping open when he goes up to the Virgin Mary. And so the rabbis know at that point, this is the man who has to marry the Virgin Mary. This is God's choice. So they get married. Now, shortly after the wedding, according to the Bible and according to Christian religious scholars, what happens is that the Virgin Mary gets visited by an angel named Gabriel. And the angel Gabriel says to the Virgin Mary, you're going to give birth to God's gift to mankind, God's son. You're basically God's wife. And so you're going to give birth to Jesus, to the Messiah, to the messenger, to the prophet who will lead everyone out of the horrible times. But even though this is good news, there's one thing you need to know. He's going to die young. He'll die before you do. You're going to have to outlive your child. He has to be sacrificed for the good of mankind. So the Virgin Mary tells Joseph. Now, Joseph, when they got married, he realized the age difference. He knew how young she was. And he said to her, look, I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to bother you for husband and wife type stuff for several years. So you just continue growing. You continue becoming a woman. I'll work in the workshop. We'll just be a couple. And then after a few years, maybe we'll start having kids. So the Virgin Mary goes to Joseph and says, hey, I'm pregnant, and I just got visited by God's angel Gabriel, who told me it's God's child, and it's going to be the savior of all mankind, and he'll have to die in order to save mankind. And Joseph, I can only imagine Joseph is like, wow, that's great. That's perfect. But anyway, um, they circumcise the baby Jesus, meaning they go ahead and take the foreskin off his penis. This is the first time that Jesus sheds blood. And there's actually a lot of paintings from the 1400s and the 1500s of the circumcision of Jesus, because that's the very significant moment. Jesus is introduced into the Jewish faith by being circumcised, and also his blood is shed for the first time, just like it's going to be shed in the future for the last time to save mankind. So, shortly after Jesus is circumcised, Joseph gets a vision in a dream. An angel comes to him in a dream and says, "Get your family, get out. You have to leave. You have to travel somewhere else. It's not safe to be here." And so when he wakes up in the morning, he gets Mary, he gets the baby Jesus, they get on camels, presumably, and they go off into Egypt. And what happens is, now, I haven't talked about the birth of Jesus. I should talk about the birth of Jesus for a second before I go ahead with the rest of that story. Now, the Virgin Mary and her husband Joseph had to leave their hometown and go to the big city because it wasn't safe. No, not that it wasn't safe. They had to leave. Sorry. They had to leave to go be part of the census. Where they lived in Israel was part of the Roman Empire. And every few years, the Roman emperor liked everybody to come and announce how much property they owned and how much they ought to be charged in taxes, so that the Roman emperor would be able to get a correct amount in taxes. So the Virgin Mary and Joseph had to leave home when she was heavily pregnant in order to go to the big city and register themselves in the census. Now, they couldn't find a hotel. They couldn't find a bed and breakfast. They couldn't find a motel. I mean, how crazy is that? That hadn't been invented yet, of course, but So the Virgin Mary and Joseph have to do the best they can. They get into town late compared to a lot of other people, and they have to sleep in a manger. So basically in a barn where they keep goats and cow and horses. So you can imagine the smell in there and a bunch of other stuff. 3 wise men follow the North Star to Bethlehem, where Jesus is going to be born. And famous story, they bring gifts. Now, the gifts are gold and frankincense and myrrh. Okay? Gold, well, why would you have gold? Because you can pay off a lot of bills with gold. You can live relatively comfortably with gold. Gold is a great gift. Frankincense, that's incense. You know, incense, sometimes it comes in these little cones, or sometimes it comes in things that look like sparklers, and you light them on fire, and they slowly burn and spread a really thick smell. Now, back in the day, back 2,000 years ago approximately, they didn't know about the germ theory. They didn't know what we know, that you've got to wash your hands, that germs travel in tiny little microscopic airborne particles, that you breathe them in and you get sick. They didn't know that. But they did make a connection that bad smells cause disease. They knew that bad smells equal getting sick. Like a bad smell in your food means that you're probably going to get sick from it. If you hang around in places where there's very poor sanitation and awful smells, you'll probably get sick. So incense was to keep illness away. So this is a great gift. It's not just to create a hippie atmosphere or something. It was actually in order, according to their germ theory understanding, it was to keep everybody healthy. If bad smells equal disease, covering up bad smells with good smells keeps you healthy. So frankincense. And myrrh. This is the weird one. Mhyrr, right? Myrrh. My understanding of what myrrh is it's an herb that grows in like little palm leaves. And what you do is you take it and put it in massage oil and you crush it. And if you do, it releases a kind of herbal, natural chemical that helps make muscle tone good and strong. In order to have a healthy baby, moms should massage and caress the baby's arms and legs and torso and neck in order to encourage good muscle tone, right? So to keep a healthy baby, you want to touch the baby, you want to massage it, you want to keep it good and healthy and active. So if you put myrrh in the massage oil that you use, it will enhance the baby's healthiness. So that's why gold, frankincense, and myrrh. For wealth, to keep disease away, and for muscle healthiness, good body tone. So not years maybe, but a few months later, Jesus gets circumcised, and then they escape from Israel because the angel came and told Joseph, you need to leave, get out now. Well, just after they left, all of the babies in that area of Israel were slaughtered by the Romans. King Herod, who was the local ruler of that part of the Roman Empire, had a dream that there was going to be a baby, a male baby that had been born and was like 6 months old at this point, that was going to be an even bigger king than Herod. And Herod could not take that. So he ordered all of the baby boys in the kingdom who were like a year old or younger killed. So Joseph had already got Jesus and the Virgin Mary out. They went to Egypt for a while. They stayed for a while, and when it was safe, they went back to Israel. Jesus knew from a young age that he was really special, that he was going to be someone who really did great things. His family took him to Jerusalem when he was like 13 from their hometown, and when he got there, he peeled off from the rest of the family, because by now he had younger half-brothers and sisters, because Joseph and the Virgin Mary had a couple more kids, I guess. So he had half-brothers and sisters, and he wandered away from the family when they were visiting Jerusalem as tourists, and they looked for him everywhere. They couldn't find him anywhere until they went to a synagogue, a Jewish temple. And there they found their son, the 13-year-old, arguing with the rabbis and teaching the rabbis religion. And the rabbis were like, how do you know so much? Well, and when his family found him, they said, what are you doing? Why did you walk away from us? You snuck away. We've been searching for hours. And he said, no, you should have known that you'd find me in my dad's house. So he knew from a young age that he was actually the child of God. So we know nothing about Jesus from the age of 12 or 13 until he's like 32. So all those really embarrassing teenage stories and college stories, just imagine what you're going to get up to in college, all the crazy things you're going to do. Don't do it in high school, all right? Don't do it in high school. Save your crazy stuff for college. Save things for when they're legal, all right? But imagine all the stories that we don't know about Jesus, his rebellious years, his crazy years, his keg stand years, or whatever. I don't know. Don't do it yourself. All right. Not until you're college. All right. So we don't know any of that. What we know is when he's like 32 years old, Jesus gets the call that he has to fulfill his destiny. He goes to his cousin because his mom's sister gave birth to a baby named John the Baptist. And he baptizes people in order to wash away sin. We're almost on 20 minutes now for a lecture, and I am going to finish some of the story of Jesus, maybe have to have a part 2 of this. But anyway, John baptizes people. He washes away sin. What sin? How come you have to have your sin washed away? Well, the story is this. You've got Adam and Eve, right? And Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden disobey God's one rule. Don't eat the forbidden fruit that grows from the tree of knowledge. Don't eat the forbidden fruit. But they do. Eve, supposedly in the Bible story, takes the forbidden fruit and eats it, and then gives it to Adam and says, honey, you have to try this. And he takes a bite, and they both get driven out of the Garden of Eden. Up till that point, Eve couldn't get pregnant. They would never die of old age. They'd never even feel old age. They'd stay young forever. They would live in peace and harmony, just the two of them, plus all the animals of the earth in the Garden of Eden. But once they get driven out, they lose all those benefits. Eve gets pregnant, which means she might die in childbirth, right? Eve gives birth to a bunch of children, including two sons, Cain and Abel. I think they're the only boys that they have. So we have Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel were hardworking kids, good boys, but Cain got really jealous of Abel. Abel got most of the good attention, he got most of the praise, and one day, while they were out working, Cain kills Abel. Abel hadn't had any kids yet, so the only, according to the Christian faith and the Jewish faith, we're all children of Cain. So we have the mark of Cain on us when we're born, according to Christianity and the Jewish faith, which means we carry the sin of murder, murdering our brother. And you need that sin washed off your soul, that sin of murder, which is like a cardinal sin. You need it washed off your soul. And so you might have been baptized if you're Christian. When you're a baby, you get holy water put on your forehead. It takes away the sin off your soul. It's a cleansing. It's a washing of that. So Jesus went to his cousin John the Baptist, who invented baptism. I mean, if you're going to get baptized, go with the guy who invented it, right? So Jesus gets baptized by his cousin John the Baptist and then starts talking to people about God and how they should really give up their false religions and stick with the one God. Now, what happens to John the Baptist? John the Baptist, a very unfortunate thing happens to him, and it's shown in a lot of art. John the Baptist did not put up with evil. He did not put up easily with awful people. And King Herod, at this point, had a sister who was really awful, I guess. She was, like, sinning a lot and trash-talking people. And John the Baptist started to trash-talk her. So Herod's sister had a daughter, Salome, who was a perfect, incredible belly dancer. And she danced for her uncle, King Herod. And Herod said, "That was amazing. I'll give you whatever you want as a prize. That was the best belly dance I've ever seen." And she says, "Well, John the Baptist has been trash-talking my mom in public, so how about you kill John the Baptist for us?" So Herod orders his men to go out and behead John the Baptist and present that head on a silver platter to King Herod and his sister. That's what happens to John the Baptist. He is beheaded by King Herod for trash-talking Herod's sister. Anyway, Jesus goes around and gets a bunch of followers, disciples, 12 of them. He gets Matthew, one of the greatest. He gets Paul, his right-hand man, Paul. And they go around and they work a bunch of miracles, converting people to Christianity. Jesus sees a woman who has committed adultery with a bunch of guys who are trying to kill her by throwing rocks at her, stoning her to death. And Jesus walks up to them, even though this is the punishment in the Old Testament for what you should do to people who commit adultery. Jesus is in the New Testament. He's in the New Age kind of tolerant, loving version of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. And so he says to them, "Hey, if any of you have never sinned, then go ahead and throw the stones. But if any of you have committed a sin, you're no better than her. Put your rocks down." So he saves this woman's life. She becomes one of his followers. Jesus goes around spreading the word to everybody. He works miracles. He gets thousands of people together and then turns small amounts of food into gigantic amounts of banquet food for all of them. One of the interesting miracles that he does, he has a childhood friend named Lazarus. And Lazarus' mom writes to him and says, "Hey, we're really glad to hear that you're off doing incredible things. That's wonderful. But Lazarus is sick. and he might die. Can you come and put your hands on him and see if a miracle will save his life? And Jesus kind of either doesn't get the message or gets the message, but it just doesn't work in his schedule. And so then the next letter that he gets is, hey, Lazarus is dead. His funeral is going to be on Sunday, so maybe you can come to the funeral. It would be great to see you. We're sorry that you missed him while he was alive. Jesus shows up. They've already put the body inside the tomb. Jesus goes up and takes the lid off the tomb, goes in, and brings Lazarus back from the dead. Now, this is one of those great miracles, bringing somebody back from the dead. But he'd been dead for a couple of days at this point, and I'm not really sure if Jesus' miracle got rid of the smell that's involved with a dead body. I hope so, but, yikers. Anyway, Jesus gets a message from God that it's time to stop doing little miracles. It's time to go and sacrifice himself. And so he gathers his followers and they go to Jerusalem, the big city. And while they're there, he calls all of his 12 disciples together. The people of Jerusalem, some of them like him, but some of them make fun of him. So Jesus is there in the big city. He sits down with all of his disciples and says, guys, this is it. This is the last supper that I'm going to be able to have with you because one of you has sold me out. One of you has betrayed me. It's okay. One of you had to do it. That's how I die. That's how I give myself for mankind. But one of you has sold me out, and this is the last time we're going to be together. He pours wine for everybody in 13 cups, because there's 13 at the table, including him. And he says, guys, drink this. This is my blood. I'll be with you forever this way. And he takes a loaf of bread and rips it into 13 parts, and he says, guys, eat this. This is my flesh. I'll stay with you this way. And Peter says to him, one of us is betraying you? That's awful. I will never betray you. I'll stand by your side till the very end. And Jesus says to him, Peter, relax. You need to tell the Romans that you don't know me, that you were only in the room here as a waiter or something, that you don't know really who I am. You need to tell them that. And Peter says, no, I'm never going to do that. I'd never do that. And Jesus says, well, you will. That's what's going to happen. But you don't want to, and I understand that. So Jesus goes off and has what's called the Passion, one of the Passions of the Christ, which is a whole bunch of doubt, a whole bunch of miserable, torturous self-feelings at this point. The devil visits him and says, big man, why are you doing this? You don't have to give up your life for mankind. I don't want you dead. Why don't you just run away and then party for the rest of your life? You can live a perfectly happy existence. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. And Jesus says, no, get away from me. This is what I'm supposed to do. If I don't sacrifice myself, nobody's soul can ever be saved. Right? So Jesus resists the temptation of the devil. The Romans burst in the room when Jesus comes back, and they come with one of the 12 disciples, a guy named Judas. Judas is the one who had betrayed Jesus and identified who he was to the Romans. The Romans weren't particularly cool with a guy spreading a religion that only involved one God and was unwilling to take on other gods, right? So the Romans come in and they don't know which guy Jesus is, except that Judas, when he leads them in the room, Judas walks right up to Jesus and kisses him. And Jesus is identified by that. He's taken by the Roman soldiers. And then the next morning, he is put on a cross. He's crucified, which is a way that the Romans would torture people until they died. And all of these guys were being tortured. There were like 4 guys being executed that day. And the Roman governor of that territory gave the people in the crowd the opportunity to pick one of them who didn't have to die. And the people in the crowd knew that there was like a murderer, there was somebody who set fires to buildings, there was somebody who forged checks, and then embezzled money and that kind of thing. And there's Jesus. And I think they let the guy who set fire to a house go instead of Jesus. So Jesus gets crucified. There's a Roman soldier next to him with a long spear who's taunting Jesus. He's like, aha, you're God's son. You're not God's son anymore. Ha, you're going to die. And he pokes him in the ribs with a spear, with his soldier spear. And Jesus bleeds out of the wound. They take Jesus' body down after a couple of days, and one of his followers had agreed to give him a tomb because Jesus didn't make preparations for his death. He was too young. So one of his followers let him have a tomb. He was buried in the tomb. And then a few days later, Jesus shows up and says hi to all his friends, and they're freaked out. One of the disciples doesn't believe it's him, and Jesus is like, you see this spear wound? You see? Stick your finger in it. And he takes doubting Thomas's finger and sticks it into the wound and says, I'm Jesus. I'm the one who was up there on the cross. I'm the one the Roman soldier speared. It's me. So Jesus went around spreading the word that he really was alive again. He would always be alive, even though it was going to be time to go to heaven soon. So Jesus is taken up to heaven by God, according to the Bible and the Christian faith. The Virgin Mary and the 11 disciples who are still around, Judas hung himself. He committed suicide for what he did to Jesus. But the rest of the disciples and the Virgin Mary would meet every year. And they would have a dinner. And it's said that at these dinners, God's Spirit would come down and make them speak in languages that they didn't know, and do all kinds of weird things to them. But anyway, then the Virgin Mary was brought up to heaven according to the Christian faith. Now, let's take a look at the reading in our next video.